Thanks for tuning in to Fallon's Daily Toast. I'm Fallon Lee O'Brien, your host. And on today's show, Michael, Salah Bunch. Thanks for being on the show, Michael.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael's a caseworker and a counselor, and he has served in the military and Peace Corps, among other things. And, well, we met, I was on my way to Salem, and that's right. And we, started, I told you about the show. How do I spark conversation?
I think you were ranting in the back of the train about being from Vermont and not liking the government. So I was like, oh, wow, I don't like the government either.
Not necessarily the government of Vermont. The government of Vermont, I think it's governments, just all over.
In the general sense.
In the general sense,
as a principle.
Yeah, the governing bodies that do represent us sometimes don't represent us so very well. And I partially feel myself to blame because I wasn't a lot more active. And so that's changing. I feel like I'm becoming more active in local politics and getting to know the local representatives and just people that have lots of ruling power, right? Yeah,
if anything, sometimes a shock is needed.
Yeah.
And that, I think this election has been a shock that has really opened people's eyes. And people have to capitalize on that shock if they expect any kind of meaningful development or change to occur.
Yeah, you've got that right. So people are going to capitalize on this shock.
And it's up to everyone about who capitalize on it and in what manner.
Yes.
A shock doesn't have any value unless you willfully, mindfully use it for change. And it's not easy, it's difficult, and it takes consistent mindfulness. But people can use the shock for something good if they wanted to.
Yes, I agree. I see it happening. I see little shocks, little bursts of beauty. People are coming together, mourning. It's sad. Water protectors in the Dakotas, those reservations, they've been experiencing just awful conditions for so long. Those Native Americans are just so terrible what's happened to them. I was reading Days of Destruction, Days of Revolt by Chris Hedges and Joe Sacco. This is the first, it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah, I hope this year should be a pretty good illustrator of the illegitimacy of the powers that be. Not only with the election, but like what you said with Dakota. The police officers who our tax dollars fund are now essentially using state violence on protesters in the name of law protection, law enforcement.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't make people question things, and the election of Trump, just the whole election cycle as a whole, if that doesn't make people think about legitimacy of the powers that be, I don't know what will.
But there seems to be a great amount more so taken and only shared amongst a very elite few.
Yeah, and definitely with the way things have been going now, I hope it's abundantly obvious that wealthy people by themselves can't really do anything to you. Wealthy people who get plugged in to the political arena and influence the political class of our society do have the ability to make huge alterations to the way the legal system runs. If you can influence judges, lawmakers, if you're a lobbyist, all these things come together to essentially make a crony capitalist system where the groups who now represent us are in fact totally being bought by lobbyists and big corporations in general. And I think that used to be conspiracy theory and now should be abundantly obvious.
Yes, and what's the solution now for those that are watching that want to do something? Is it organize as best you can and show up more at, I'm a little bit insulted that there were only 5 questions on the ballot that I had to, we should be voting more. And politics should be a part-time profession for everyone, I feel. I don't know what exactly the solution is. I imagine there are a bunch of them. If anyone has any solutions, let us know.
The solution to what, though?
The solution to this absolute divide between the very wealthy and then the people who are just really struggling and to get by. How do you solve that, the gap?
I think that there are two main solutions that cannot be reconciled, which is that one is making a system that can only be minimally corrupted. If you ever read the book Anti-Fragile, it talks about this a little bit. The more centralized and the bigger a state becomes, the easier it is for more and more people to game the system from within, such as people who work for the government, they quit, work for the corporation for a while, and go back in the government. It ends up creating this revolving door where people learn how to game systems and influence lawmakers. You could try to make a system that is so decentralized to the point to where even if someone tried to take it over, they couldn't do any damage. Or it would be very, very small, localized damage. The other way would try to be to build everything up so big and so bureaucratic that almost really nothing gets done. And personally, I'm a big fan of the idea of almost trying to depoliticize life, to make it so that whatever state is in power cannot harm individual rights anymore through decentralization. So I would like to see power shift away from the state and to the individual, because that's where all the power really is. It's in the individual and not some abstract collective.
Well said. Beautifully said. And as far as, being a sustainable communities, how can we, there's so many books that have been written, and communities that have done that. Because we've taken a lot of funding from the federal government. And the taxes, oh golly, the taxes, the tax dollars.
Well, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't trust any movement of attempting to seek answers through the government. Especially, maybe this is just me being someone who was in the Peace Corps and now has to deal with HUD and D&D in the city of Boston. The more people just kind of go to the state for solutions, you're not going to see anything immediate. You're not going to see anything that is individual focused. You're going to see something that's driven by statistics, best practices that come to them through academia, which may or may not be relevant to the individual's life. I say you got to go the opposite direction. You got to go individual local action, people helping people individually, to where enough of that action eventually creates the change you want to see.
The ricochet.
Because what I was saying before about voluntarism, if you try to make something good happen through coercion, whatever the benefits you see in the short term, it's going to have negative, unforeseeable consequences. So if you want something good to happen, you can't use coercion. It has to be people exchanging positively, mutually beneficial exchange is the way to go.
Yeah,
as much as possible.
Thank you. That's great advice to give. And what, now just to go back, you served in the military. And what was your time like? How do you feel as today is Veterans Day? And, it's just that, too, is a hard thing to grasp, to have a holiday like Veterans Day. It seems veterans we should be constantly taking care and tending to their needs and their mental health and everything so much more than we do. And that's one of the biggest, it reflects. Our country reflects its people, it's all of its people. And right now, America isn't looking so shiny and bright, A lot of people are heartbroken and just sad and lonely and not being tended to with compassion and care and kindness. I feel so grateful to have the most kind and caring people in my life. And I want to give that to others, So I guess I love that more localized community, one-on-one. Yeah, and
what you mentioned, Veterans Day.
Yeah.
I hate that Veterans Day is just this one day where everyone goes out, hey, you can go to Denny's, get some free food. Thank you for your service. And then 364 days out of the year, no one cares about veterans.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a general statement. But I work with homeless people. I see homeless veterans all the time. It's a really sad state of affairs. And the city of Boston claims that there are no homeless veterans in Boston. That is based on statistics. There are homeless veterans out there right now, but statistically, they're kind of taken out of the count, so to speak. So there are homeless people right now in Boston who are veterans, and of course throughout the nation, there's still a lot of homeless veterans. We have this mentality where you go into the military at a young age. I was in at 17, and so you go into the military, and there's no reflection upon the morality of any of it. You just get trained to fight. Which I'm pro military and pro veteran, but I'm anti war unless it's in defense. And we've had nothing but wars for empire. And when's the last time we even declared war? I believe it was World War II. Everything else has been this open and secret battle with the whole planet, with bases everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you come back, and then veterans are sort of ostracized in a way. They're kind of made to felt like they don't fit in. They have a strange sense of humor, maybe some slightly destructive habits. And instead of being really seen as warriors, people are now sort of seen as just these sort of almost broken men and women, when you can't treat people like that. You can't view them that way. If people really want to make a difference for veterans, help veterans who in your life, find out, well, hey, what do you want? Like, what would make you happy? Like, hey, do you let's talk about something. I'm not going to judge you for having a strange, dark sense of humor. I'm not going to look at you a certain way because of your past. Those are things that actually matter. And because, the VA is just a nightmare. So, if you know a veteran who has medical problems, I don't know, work with them as human beings. Don't just try to see them as people with guns.
And also, and I feel like we all need to pay more attention to the agencies that exist, that are helping, that are like claiming, and how can we be of more service? How can you utilize me for my resources and my network of connection and community? Yeah. And that's, I think, what I'm trying to do a lot with the show, and just within this community here, any community we come upon. So you're living in the Boston area now?
I live in Salem.
Yeah, Salem, right. And goodness gracious, that's beautiful. And how do you feel about it?
Well,
How do we feel about it? It's just, there's a lot going on. So it's just to really try to understand it, you've got to take a big step back. And all we can do is watch and see what happens and continue, to care for one another and come together in an organized fashion and come to make decisions like, let's get this done. Because there's a lot of people spewing a lot of lies out there. You've got to be really, really very mindful, as you said, to be careful about what you watch, what you're tuning into. As I was telling you, I went to see my mom, and I turned on channel 5. It was like Chronicle 5, the weather, and it was just so bogus.
Yeah.
Not to mention what there's I don't watch TV. I produce it, but I don't tune into main TV. I watch videos, YouTube. I have, different people that I follow, and then I'm interested in what they have to say, and But what they're putting on television that a lot of people watch is honest bogus, and I really wish they could be held accountable for what they're. The garbage that they're sharing to so many, and that should be. The whole media cable issue that's racket.
Yeah.
And how can I guess it's just word of mouth.
Yeah. The mainstream media has become obsolete.
Yeah.
There used to be maybe a time 80 years ago where maybe there was only a few places where you could trust to get news because there wasn't a whole lot out there. Now, knowledge itself has become decentralized to our benefit. I can read about people who are in Syria right now because they have computers with internet and they can put information out there faster than any mainstream media. You can find almost any piece of knowledge you want online for free. You can teach yourself economics, philosophy, all these things. All this stuff is right at your fingertips.
Right.
And so why would you trust these people, these talking heads on TV, who they're bought and paid for by politicians?
Oh, sure.
They're controlled by the state to some degree at least. And even if they're not controlled by anyone, they will lose if they go against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
They have an invested interest in status quo. They don't care about what individuals think. And so we can secede from the mainstream media, YouTube, blogs. I go on a website.
Fallon's Daily Toast.
Boom! There you go. See,
Ooh.
right there. So there's so many options out there. You just got to invest in yourself.
Yes.
To find out information, which is great.
It is so great.
It's liberating.
It is liberating. I feel like maybe this happening now all over. It's strengthening. It's acting as something that's bringing people closer together. I have friends who are on their way right now, or maybe even there in South Dakota, North Dakota, and to help to participate and volunteer in the kitchen and do whatever they can. Mm-hmm. Winter's coming on.
Yeah. It's
gonna get cold out there. Places of worship, like churches, open up their doors.
Yeah.
Really, there should be soup kitchens every night in churches and places for people to sleep.
You asked, how is it like? I'm moving around a lot now. I'm in the Boston area.
Yeah.
And you mentioned churches. One big difference between living in Texas and living in Massachusetts. So I was in Austin. I did homelessness services there as well. There is so much less bureaucracy there that churches do step up because there's a void, and nature abhors a void. So instead of, for example, putting people in big brick and steel subsidized units, people can live in tiny homes, and it's affordable. You can do it for maybe $200, $300 a month. And if you live on Social Security, or you do landscaping, construction, which a lot of homeless people do, you don't need the state. You can live in an actual home. You can rent it $200, $300 a month, and you can live like a human being instead of just being put in essentially a room that's maybe the size a little bit bigger than a jail cell, which is but a lot of subsidized units in Boston are very small single room units, and that is possible in places like Texas because churches and nonprofits, they control their own money. It's private money. You can do with it what you will. If you require all this money from HUD, you can't do that. You have to follow the game. And the more you follow the game, unfortunately, it steals the autonomy of individuals. It takes all that right. Now in Boston, they have a system that's this coordinated access system. And now, if you're homeless, you may have to just wait until you get an invitation for housing. And if you don't accept it, you're going to have to wait months.
And even if you do get a voucher, which might have a voucher of $1,300, nothing's
you can't
available.
use it. Yeah, you're going to, back to that single room you go. Yeah,
and it's so dehumanizing.
It is. It's
especially when they're walking. They're having to get up at 7 a.m, not being able to go back till 4. Some of them working 2-3 jobs. Some of them just. And then you see all these luxurious condominium complexes going up everywhere.
Yeah.
And that So there's going to be more to this. I mean, there has to be more attention. More. This needs to be talked about a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. So this has been a really good time sitting and talking with you.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you very much for sharing with the audience your thoughts on everything, because this is it's all really, really great, and I'm happy to start to implement it though, right? Let's start implementation, more of it, get it going. This stuff should be urgent. We need to be streamlining this. It's that's where we're not acting, swiftly enough, especially when it comes to just the state of affairs with our veterans alone, and then climate and, waste. I mean, that's a whole other issue, talking waste management and, getting back to the root of it, the guy making real good, establishing really great connections with the farmers and with the, so much to prepare and do. But
I'll throw a couple things out there for people who want to Google things.
Okay, Google,
do the Google foo. There's a couple really great resources out there, all free for people who want to self-educate, find out more things. If you Google voluntarism, voluntary and then ism, That should lead you to some good places. If you're in Boston, there was a man named Lysander Spooner. He's buried in Forest Hill Cemetery.
Oh.
Abolitionist, anarchist from the 1800s. Fascinating person to read about who can give you some really good ideas about
Spooner, okay.
Yeah, Lysander Spooner.
Lysander Spooner. All right.
Another good option, go to Mises, the Mises Institute. You can just Google that. And there's a man who recently spoke in Boston. His name is Tom Woods. Puts out free stuff all the time. And so I think the main thing, just in my mind with everything, is people have way more power than they believe they do. But if you always just sit around and wait for some external force to come in and help you, you're going to be waiting around a long time. If you really care about things, you got to do it yourself. Find like-minded people. Embrace mutual beneficial exchange, and find out what people need and help them do it.
Yes.
With this age, you can do Kickstarters. You can just go online, find something you believe in, donate time, donate money, whatever you can, and you got to do it yourself.
Yes.
And find people who think like you, combine your forces, and make things happen.
Yes, thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed to hear, and I think a lot of us needed to hear. So I'd love to have you on again.
For sure.
We can talk, maybe do like a once a month update with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be great.
No
Talk
problem.
about, so we can maybe fill people in, tune everyone into some of the improvements, some of the really great things that are coming from all of this that we're going to be doing.
Right.
So tune in, and yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.